Hey everyone, welcome back to Tactical Magic. This is Molly Mandelberg, your host, and I'm excited to be bringing to you a episode more about healing and the transformation that can come when you get support on your path of expanding beyond your limitations and healing the parts of you that may feel wounded or hard and getting to a new place in your life. I have a very special guest today, and we'll pause for just a second and be right back. It's not just about mastering technology. It's not just about brand or messaging. It's not just about making more money. It's about showing up in a big way so your people can find you. This is about bringing your most wild and authentic self into the hustle and grind. Welcome to Tactical Magic, a business strategies podcast for the warrior goddess entrepreneur. All right. Rachel Astarte is a holistic psychotherapist, transformational life coach, author, and educator. She is the author of Celebrating Solitude, How to Discover and Honor Your Highest Self. And her podcast is Self-Talk with Rachel Astarte, which helps listeners develop a strong foundation of self. Her therapy and coaching practice is entirely virtual, allowing her to work with patients all over the world, which is good news. And I just want to highlight this. I read this on her website today. Your problems are blessings pointing you in the direction of wellness. And that is so my mindset. It's so in alignment. So welcome to the show, Rachel.
Thank you, Molly. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you found your path to being a healer and a therapist.
Yeah. So, it all kind of started at a very young age. I was very much a nature kid and loved being in nature and felt very healed in nature. But then as a lot of kids experience, other things become more important, like, school and all that sort of stuff. So I ended up going the route of my parents' careers, which was writing and acting. And they were also both educators. So I became a teacher, a professor. And, while doing my acting and writing thing, but the whole thing is really, for me, it's always been about communication, right? Well, I want to be able to reach as many people as I can through my art. That was the original idea. But I found that I wasn't really reaching as many people as I wanted to reach. So shortly after my son was born, I thought I would really like to get into more of an actual healing field. So that's when I went back to school and I became a transformational life coach, which was a lot of fun. And also I'm a clinical hypnotherapist as well. So, and that's when I started my original practice. As I started doing more coaching, I began to realize that I was edging very dangerously close to doing talk therapy, which of course I wasn't legally able to do. So I said I'd better get back to school. So I went back to school and got my master's in marriage and family therapy. And 5 years later, after all of my clinical hours, I became licensed. And so now I am so glad that I get to bring together those two passions. And I still do a lot of I'm still a writer, and I don't do acting per se, but I do voiceover gigs on the side. So I get to keep all of my balls juggling, and it's very, very satisfying to do that. But I really get to reach a lot more people with the message of healing. So
I love that. And I always ask that question first, because even though today we're talking more about transformational healing and growth, we're also talking mostly to an audience of hopefully many of you out there are spiritual women entrepreneurs. So I like to talk about the journey to where you are now in your business, because it is a meandering path. And when you stay focused on that core value of wanting to reach people, wanting to make a difference, wanting to make an impact, it's okay if the focus changes. It's okay if you need to go back for more training. And that is very much what my path was like. And I love hearing that that's how it went for you too, that you want to make a difference. And sometimes the modality shifts and changes and rearranges, and you find your way to the work that you're meant to be doing. And it's so much easier, in my opinion, to be someone who writes as an outlet, both for your own processing and growth, and also for how you want to show up and share with people. It's a super powerful tool. That's awesome.
Absolutely. And I think that was one of the most difficult things for me growing up, was that it was heavily suggested that I should choose one path. Either you're a writer or you're an actor. and I couldn't do it. I just heard an interview with Billy Porter talking about this on Instagram, saying like, "Oh no, darling, I'm not going to make a choice. I'm going to do what I'm here to do, and I'm going to be really good at all the stuff that I do." So how I decided was to say I have to follow my heart. If this is what I want to be doing, then that's what I'm going to do. And I didn't understand until I landed in this position that everything that I took on my whole life really has prepared me for this moment. And so so whatever, as you said rightly, sometimes we have to shift modalities. Well, those modalities stay with you in your brain and in your body memory, and they're going to help you down the line some way, somehow.
Totally. Absolutely true. I'm actually interviewing later today one of my mentors, Charlotte Jacobs, who did a very similar thing. She was an acupuncturist, and then she ended up using the framework for acupuncture, the 5 elements, to turn that into a business modality, a system to follow, which is really powerful. She also talks about DLOS, which is those of us who do lots of stuff. And that's not bad and wrong, but that's right. Who some of us are. We're just multifaceted, very complex creatures who have lots of interests, and all of that can feed into your practice and your work. So tell us a little bit more about who you serve and who comes to you and how you help people.
Yeah. So, well, as it also says on my website, my main focus is the development of a healthy self, right? So once we develop that really healthy foundation of self, then we're better able to obviously deal with whatever we have to deal with in our lives, because all of our lives are messy at some point. But it also helps us to show up for the rest of the world as our highest self, as our truest self, and with, all of our strength behind us. So I really work very closely with people who are in some kind of transformational period or some transition in their life, whether it's changing careers or changing relationships, or even coming to terms with their sexuality, or some kind of shift that's asking them to sort of be at a crossroads, and they don't really necessarily know how to negotiate that, or they know which direction they want to go in, but they don't know quite how to do it the right way or the most authentic way for themselves. So that's a lot of people, right? A lot of kind of people. So I would narrow it down even further. I do work with a lot of artists, but I also work with, some stay-at-home moms. I work with entrepreneurs. I work with people who are students. So it's a really wide range, but the path is individual for each person, obviously. But the goal is kind of the same, which is to kind of create the self that you are comfortable with, and have the tools to deal with whatever life throws at you.
Yeah, it's super valuable. And I will say, for my own journey to loving my body, my own journey to growing a successful business, my own journey to finding a really deep partnership and love that I've been cultivating more recently, all of that required a self, like a caring for myself and a lot of healing work to get out of the way, so that I was my own priority and my highest excitement was my main focus. And that allowed other things to arise in my life because of that. So absolutely, I 100% agree with you. I also want to focus in on what you said, what I repeated off your website, which is your problems are blessings pointing you in the direction of wellness. Will you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, when we feel like we're stuck or life isn't going the way that we want, we blame these problems, whatever they might be. I have anger issues, or I have, disordered eating, or I have anxiety or depression, or whatever it is. When we remember that the self is a divine entity, it's a self-regulating entity, that whatever our individual problems are really just trying to send an alert to us that something's out of alignment, right? So if I'm depressed all the time, obviously there's something that's draining my energy. I have to look at what that is. So rather than saying, "Oh, that's it, I'm a depressive," you know what I mean? Now I've labeled myself that I'm an anxious person, or I'm an angry person. Instead of becoming those problems, if we look at them as beacons on the way to healing, then they become our allies and we can work with them. So it's like the light on the dashboard, of your car going off saying it's time to change the oil. You don't throw the car away, you change the oil, say, oh, the car's broken, clearly, no, it's just, you need to change your oil, man, and so sometimes we need to change our oil. And if we just stop beating ourselves up for our quote unquote problems and start to see them as almost like little mile markers on a treasure map, then we can say, oh, okay, this is how I can work with my depression. This is how I can work with my anxiety or whatever it is,
Are there any like go-to tips or tools or tricks of the trade that people could use right now to start separating themselves from that identity of I am broken or this is so wrong and it is just the way it is now, to that distinction?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, it's all about self-talk, which is really why I started the podcast, Self-Talk, because we have to speak more gently to ourselves. That's a first step. Awareness is really the first step. Just being aware that you're speaking to yourself that way, that I am broken, whatever that means to you. Just being aware of that is the necessary first step to changing it, right? So then to be able to say, hey, I know that I'm not where I want to be right now, or I know I'm not fully actualized, but the fact that I'm even aware of that means that I must be somewhere on the path to getting there, or else you wouldn't even know that there was anything wrong. So be gentle with yourself. That's a really, really important tool. So awareness and being gentle with yourself. Don't just throw away all the mean words, throw away all the shoulds, throw away all of the I can't.
Or I am this way. This is just
yeah.
Yeah.
Forget the big declarative blanket statements about yourself. You are someone who is a blessed being who is in flux, as we all are.
Yeah, super powerful. And I think asking questions is a great way to sometimes jolt that out of the system a little bit. Like if you think you are this way, who would you be without this feeling? Who would you be without that thought? That's some of the work by Byron Katie, but
yes, right.
Super powerful just to question it. Anytime we find ourselves making a declarative statement or making a like general rule or decision about our lives or conclusion, it's so valuable to question that and to ask, is that really what I want? And words carry weight. Words are spells that we are casting every day, all day long. And once we're aware of the language that we're using, you could even talk about the same issue with just different language and the whole thing gets lighter. It becomes a possibility instead of a problem.
Exactly right.
Yeah, it's super important. So tell me, for you, and I know obviously because of the work that you do, how important is it for people to get support with this stuff? How easy is it to do it on our own? I know for me, I've had tons of mentors and I have best friends all over the country who are coaches and healers. So I have so many people to go to when I need support. But how many, I just know a lot of people are out there doing this on their own. How valuable is it to reach out?
It's extremely important. I mean, when I was in graduate school studying to be a therapist, it was required that we be in therapy. That's how, so as we're studying to be therapists, you had to be in therapy, so that's how important this is, that even the people who do this work need help. So yes, get help. I mean, get your support team in place. It's one of the first questions I ask even my patients. I say, who's your support team besides me? So great, you have me, but who else is there? So it's wonderful to hear you have so many people rallying around you and supporting you. It's extremely important. And I think things are changing a little bit, but there's a lot of stigma about saying, oh, I have a therapist. You know what I mean?
It's becoming almost like posh to have a therapist.
Now it is. Yeah, now it is, which is great. But I think it's also really important to understand that, and if I could tell this to everybody, I would, your therapist is there as an advocate for your healing. And you work, together 50-50. It can't, so you can't go to a therapist and say, fix me, because that's ridiculous. But if you're willing to do the work, then you and your therapist are crafting this beautiful being. And it's one of the most beautiful dances I've ever seen, when you get to be part of that, when you realize that your big journey, your big art project is yourself. And yeah, it really helps to have people to talk to. And the other part of that is not everything needs to be broken. Like, if you go to a therapist, you're like, well, I don't have anything to talk about because this was a good week, then great. You can go deeper into your psyche. You can go deeper into your dreams. You can go deeper, I mean, literally and figuratively. You can use the work with a therapist to really craft that person that you want to be. You don't always have to be in triage,
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to be struggling to get help, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
It doesn't
exactly.
have to be at the lowest moment. I actually started seeing a therapist last year, honestly, at one of the happiest times of my life. And I said that when I got on the first call with her. I was like, I don't have a lot to complain about right now. I'm honestly in one of the most blissful parts of my life, and I feel equipped in many ways. And I know that greater is possible. I think that really is what it comes down to. Is
Yes.
greater possible in your life? Are you willing to acknowledge that you're capable of better communication, of healthier relationships, of more connection to yourself, to your highest self? Are you fulfilled in your career and your purpose, or would you like to evolve and transcend and transform into a more self-actualized being? And if so, then do whatever the F it takes to get that support.
Exactly. Yeah.
Super valuable. So I feel like I want to take this opportunity because you are one of the rare few who starts as a life coach and then goes to therapy. What are the differences of those two modalities for you, or as you see them, and how have they helped you and serve your clients better or differently?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So I usually use a little visual, but I'll describe it while I'm doing it. So if you imagine, the when you're talking about life coaching, you have your client, and the life coach is usually a little bit ahead, or with the client, or a little bit ahead, urging them to come over to whatever goal it is that they want to go toward. When you're doing therapy, your client or your patient is here, and then the therapist may be a little bit behind, saying, I'm supporting you, and I'm in case you fall, because and this has to do with the kind of work we do too. Life coaching is usually looking at future goals. Now, so is therapy, but oftentimes we'll work with past trauma or past stories that may be influencing where you are in the present. So what's beautiful about having both of those skills is that we can switch back and forth depending on what's required in that moment. So sometimes I'll be doing some deep inner child and reparenting work with someone very traumatic, and then they start to get a little more ground under their feet. And then they want to start talking about, okay, so now what do I do with this information? I have 2 different career paths I can take. And then we start doing a little bit of coaching around that. So it's really lovely to be able to offer both.
Yeah, it sounds like you're synthesizing those two really well. And I love hearing that. And it makes a lot of sense. One is more focused on the past and how to recover from what we've already been through. And the other is more future focused and how do we get from here to there. And that just sounds like such a beautiful, seamless integration to move from one to the other, because some people might not be ready for coaching. There's too much still in them that needs to be processed in order to get ready for that future outlook. And yeah, what a gift you are to your people.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I hope so. I certainly hope so.
Yeah, of course. What are some of the things that people find or end up getting to? What are some of the success stories? I know you must be HIPAA compliant, but where are your clients generally trying to get to?
It really depends on the person. Sometimes people are just trying to get to the next day, you know what I mean? And it can be that bad, sometimes they're just trying to get to a place where they're not afraid of themselves, not afraid of their own, the people in their lives, and then there are some people who I've watched work, just career's an easy one, but, working from, just even developing what it is they want to do, to, taking temporary or contract positions that are closer to their goals. And then finally getting to the place where, we don't know finally, but, currently they're in a place where they're really happy and they feel satisfied. Maybe when they started their work with me, they were anxious and sick because they didn't like their jobs. They felt, it was energetically draining. Yeah. And so through our work, being able to say, you have the strength to make a change. And then believing that you can do that. Right. So, and I actually, in my teaching positions, I teach at an online school. I mean, it's not all online. It's called Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. And so I work with a lot of healers in training, facilitating whatever courses that they're taking. And this happens too, is like having to deal with not only the fear of failure, but the fear of success. What happens when all my dreams come true. So it really depends on the patient. What we would consider success would be that they feel centered in themselves and can carry on, through their day with no matter what happens to them.
Yeah, that resilience, definitely. Mm-hmm. So tell us, what was the biggest block you had to being a successful business owner? I'm just claiming that you are for you. What was the biggest block or hurdle that you had to overcome to get to this point? And what do you think was the factor that helped you get there?
The biggest hurdle was the fact that I decided very early on that I was going to go it on my own. And that is, I was working in corporate America and, in Manhattan for a multi-billion-dollar company as a senior copywriter. And I left in 2005. And I said, I want to start my own business. And at that time it was writing. So I've been on my own since 2005. And the biggest hurdle has always been dealing with the hustle. I hate the hustle, right? So you're constantly trying to get new clients, and now, making sure that I have a viable caseload so that I can make sure that I can live and pay my mortgage. So it's really about the hustle for me. That was always the biggest obstacle, was feeling like I wasn't quite getting where I needed to be. So I had to do a lot of self-talk around that too. And a lot of it was letting that go, stop referring to it as that, just do your work and it'll, and people will show up,
Yeah. I think it's really easy to fall into the vanity metrics of social media posts getting engagement, or of, enough people signing up for the call or signing up for the program or showing up to the consults. And while those numbers can help, they are not the ultimate. It's who we be is much more magnetic than how often and how much we show up, I think. So I appreciate that a lot, that it does feel like a hustle, and it is a hustle. And I actually, support my clients to make the consistent showing up on all the platforms less of a hustle. And it's also so much more about who we're being and how we're willing to receive, that really draws more people into our lives and businesses. And that's a super awesome reminder. Really important. Yeah, for sure. What is next for you?
What is next? Well, I actually just started doing virtual writing and meditation workshops. So I've been teaching a workshop for many years called Write Yourself Open. It's 4 words, Write Yourself Open. And usually, I taught them in person, but now that we are in this pandemic, I decided it would be really great to try to put them into the virtual format. So I just had my first one on Sunday. It went really well. So I'm going to start doing more of those. And I post about that all the time on Instagram. So, if anyone wants to follow me on Instagram, you'll know when the next ones are coming up.
Handle?
Oh yes, it's just at Rachel Astarte.
Okay. Great.
Yeah. So, and so that's going to be something I'm going to do a lot more of. It's a beautiful workshop. We do a different theme every workshop. So last so on Sunday we did transformation. So whatever you are working on to transform, we do a guided meditation around it. Then there's 10 minutes of writing based on what you received in the journey that you just had. And then we spend the rest of the session, everyone gets an opportunity to either read what they wrote or talk about what they received from their highest self in the meditation. And we talk about how to process and integrate that into their lives in a practical way so that the gifts aren't being wasted, you know? And it really is a lovely, lively conversation about other people's deepest psyches, you know, and how to support each other in growth. So
it's amazing what can come out when you're writing. I know that for me, I write every day because I'm not a whole and complete person when I don't.
Oh, I hear that.
Yep. Yeah. Whether people are writers or not, having a targeted time, especially guided by somebody who understands the process to go to those deep places through writing is such a powerful tool. I actually lead a monthly membership that uses writing in the same way. One of our two calls each month is strategic and one is more about that inner work. So super valuable stuff. Yeah, we're almost running out of time here in a couple minutes. What are the best places for people to go and learn more and maybe even book a call with you?
Yeah, sure. So the best place to find me would be my website, which is rachelastaretherapy.com. Pretty easy. And you can read all about me there. My phone number is there. My email is there. You can always reach out to me that way. And I am currently accepting new patients at the moment. So that would work out fine if anyone wants to reach out that way. My podcast is at selftalkpodcast.com. And Instagram is probably the best social media platform to find me. So that's just at Rachel Astarte.
And I will just put a plug in. It's actually super helpful to follow therapists on Instagram when you're scrolling your feed and you get that download of wisdom at the perfect moment. It can be really helpful because you were trying to tune out and then it tunes you back in. And so definitely go find Rachel Astarte on Instagram and make sure to follow her right now. If you've got the ear of the world, what are the last words of wisdom you'd like to share with us today?
Don't forget that you are a divine being. Don't forget. You already forgot, which is why you're having trouble in your life. You are a divine being. Our whole purpose in this life is to remember how powerful we are. So, and we need you to step into your power. That's what I would say.
We need you to step into your power. I could not have said it better myself. I appreciate that so much. So we will put rachelastaretherapy.com in the show notes so everybody has the link to go and check out your website. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your magic with us and for doing the work that you're doing, because I know that every healer out there, as many or as few clients as we get to serve, there's a ripple effect from that. And so everybody out there listening, don't give up, keep going, find the work that you're meant to do, keep asking big questions and taking bold action because you are here for a reason. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Molly.
Thanks for tuning into Tactical Magic. To find out more, be sure to take a second and subscribe to the show and come back next week for another edition of Tactical Magic.